talofa to all of our viewers today. Special talofa to all of our Year 13 biology students. Hopefully that you're all ready to learn something new. But before we start, make sure that you have a notebook ready to write down your notes.
Today's lesson will be focusing on Strand 1, Variety of Life. We will be focusing on the binomial naming system and dichotomous key. This lesson will specifically look at the learning outcomes stated above. Use a binomial system to identify organisms. Use a dichotomous key to identify organisms. And use a dichotomous key to characterize identified organisms. So remember the specific learning outcomes, you can find them in the unpacking of the curriculum. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to understand the importance of a binomial naming system. You will also be able to identify different characteristics of living things. You will be able to understand how to design a dichotomous key. And lastly, explain the function and importance of a dichotomous key. So before we can start our lesson today, it's good to understand these key words. You'll come across these words within our lesson. The first word is a binomial system. The binomial system of naming species, it uses Latin words. Each name has two parts, the genus and the species. Identify means to establish or indicate who or what someone or something is. Species are organisms that belong to the same species if they normally interbreed or produce fertile offsprings together. Characterize, it means to describe the distinctive nature of or features. Organisms, when you see this word, it means an individual or one living thing. Characteristics are distinguishing quality, traits, or features of an individual and many other things. It is often a distinctive mark or feature, attributes, or property of an individual or thing. A dichotomous key is a tool that provides the readers with two statements. These statements are normally choices that describe characteristics about items or living organisms. Binomial nomenclature or binary nomenclature, these terms are the same thing. Just in case you see in different textbooks, some use the word binomial and others use binary. This system was first used by the Swedish scientist called Carl Linnaeus. He was also called the founder of modern taxonomy. So the word taxonomy just means classification. The binomial nomenclature is a system that is used to provide a unique name to any organism, and this includes plants, animals, microorganisms, and other living things. This naming system makes it easier to understand them better and also separates each species from each other. Therefore, this is a universally accepted naming system. It is a formalized system of naming species of living things by giving each a name composed of two parts. So these two parts are the genus name and the species name. The genus name, or the genus, it is a rank in the classification system that is generally below family and above species level. It identifies attributes where species have structural similarities. So if you think about whereabouts is genus and species within the organization structure, you can always think back from domain, which is the largest part of the organization structure, to the more specific and smaller group of living things, which is the species. So the top has a domain, then you have kingdom, phyla, class, order, family, then genus and species. So always remember the organization structure when you're referring to the genus and the species. The species name is a set of particular species apart from the rest of the species within the genus. So together, the genus name and the species name, they make up an organism's scientific name. So all organisms or all living things, they have a specific scientific name. And these scientific names, they are normally seen in italics. So binomial nomenclature or the binary nomenclature, it normally has rules. The scientific name of each organism should be written in italics, like I've mentioned before. The first word of the scientific name will identify the genus, and the last word will identify the species. If you're writing it in handwriting, both words of the scientific name, so both the genus and the species, should be underlined. If printed, so if you're typing it within a computer and you print it out on paper, both words need to be italicized, or both of them need to be written in italics. And our last rule, the genus name should start with a capital letter, and the species name should start with a small letter. So again, the scientific name is made out of the genus name and the species name. The scientific name, so this is a good example of a scientific name. Our scientific name as humans is Homo sapiens. Homo, which means man, and sapien, which means intelligence or wise. So let's look at our first activity. State the name of the scientists that use a dichotomous key first. Our second question, describe the difference between the genus and the species name. And our last question, explain how scientific names of species are developed. So I'll give you 1 minute to think about your answers. So how are you going with your activity? That's great. So look at our first answer. The correct answer is Carl Linnaeus. Our second answer, the genus identifies species attributes where species have structural similarities. It is a first name and it is normally in capital letters. But the species sets a particular species apart from the rest of the species within the genus. It is a second name and it is not in capital letters. Our last answer, a name used by scientists, especially the taxonomic name of an organism that consists of a genus and a species. So together the genus and the species makes up a scientific name of an organism. For example, the scientific name for humans is Homo sapiens. Homo, which means man-like, is a genus, and sapiens, which means wise or intelligence, is the species. Awesome. So let's look at the dichotomous key. A dichotomous key, the word dichotomous, it means separating into two parts. And we all know the function of a key. A key can open up a specific lock. So if we put together the dichotomous and key, you know that you are trying to separate these options into two, and by the end, you can come across one specific answer. So two types of dichotomous keys. The first type is branching tree, and the second type of dichotomous key is give a written instruction. In both cases, there are normally two choices at each step. If you make the correct choice, you will end up with a name for the organism you want to identify. So a dichotomous key is a tool that provides the reader with two statements. Like I mentioned before, these statements are choices. These choices can describe characteristics about items or living organisms. These statements help the reader to classify and identify the items. With a dichotomous key, you choose between two clear physical characteristics that the organism possesses or not, and you move down the chart or tree or list until you finally can identify it. So this is our first type of dichotomous key. So we're trying to identify the different balls. You have the basketball, soccer ball, rugby ball, and football. So you look at our first option, round or elongated. So the round balls, which include basketball and the soccer ball, they are on your left. And the elongated balls, which include the rugby ball and the football, are on your right. Then you look at the option for the elongated balls. Does it have lace? So yes or no. Yes, the football has lace, and no, rugby balls don't have a lace. The round balls, if you look at the options, it's either that they have lines or hexagons and pentagons. So you look at the options and then you look at the balls. Basketballs, they have lines, but the hexagons and pentagons, you can see that in the soccer ball. Using these same balls, you can look at the second type of dichotomous key by giving options or writing down the instructions. Ball is perfectly round and it is circular. The ball is not round and it is not circular. So if you look at the balls, the first option, go to 2. What are the balls that are moving to 2? That's correct, the basketball and the soccer ball, because those balls are round. The rugby ball and the football, they are not round, they are elongated. So if you look at step 3, ball has one side with lace. That is obviously the football, and the ball that does not have lace, it is the rugby ball. So the importance of a dichotomous key, it lets experts, so scientists and non-experts, including us as students, to identify species based on their characteristics or their behaviors. It is really important that this scientific tool is used to identify different organisms based on their observable traits. So these are the traits that you can see by observing to identify species or to determine whether a particular organism has been identified or described before. So let's look at our questions for activity 2. Describe the function of a dichotomous key. Our second question, list the 2 types of dichotomous keys. True or false, a dichotomous key is a scientific tool. It identifies an organism's observable traits. It allows an organism to find a shelter. And our last question, a dichotomous key can only be used to identify living things. So I'll give you a couple of seconds before we discuss our answers. So look at the answers. Number 1, this tool allows you to choose between two clear physical characteristics. So if you're thinking about something that has physical characteristics, it's things that you can see or the features that you can see that the organism possesses or not. So does it have these characteristics or does it not? And when you move down the charts or tree or list, by the end you will be able to identify all the objects or all the living things mentioned in your dichotomous key. The two types of dichotomous keys are branching tree and given written instructions. So true or false? First question, true, true, and the third and fourth are both false. Awesome. Hopefully we all got those questions correct. Okay, so designing a dichotomous key it's really easy to design a dichotomous key if you follow or understand the different steps. Step 1 is to list down the characteristics. List 2 is to organize those characteristics. Step 3, write down opposite options to suggest whether an organism has or does not have that physical feature. Step 4, match the organisms with different characteristics until everyone is matched with a common or scientific name. And our last step is to make sure that you test out your dichotomous key if it works. How would you know whether a dichotomous key works? Well, you will know it works by the end of the dichotomous key. All of the unknown names or unknown scientific names for organisms, everyone will be matched up with their correct common name or scientific name. So what are characteristics? So characteristics are distinguishing features or quality of something. It is something that makes a person or thing different, or it can make an organism unique. A special quality or trait that makes a person or thing or group different from the other. So characteristics, they are normally seen the same as features or physical observed parts. So features, they are the various parts of the face, forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, chin, cheeks, and ears that gives its individuality and character. So what makes this organism unique or different? So identifying the odd one out. When you are designing a dichotomous key, you always need to understand the physical differences. So what you see that is different? How would you differentiate one organism from the other? Most organisms have similar characteristics, but you really need to focus on every single detail. So, yes, even though they are quite similar, always make sure that each organism is unique. So you need to focus on those small details. Make sure when you design your dichotomous key, it eliminates and identifies each organism by the end of all options. So what are similar characteristics? What makes one organism have the same parts or observed structure as the other? Having characteristics that are common, similarities between two things that have characteristics that resemble each other but are not exactly alike, and people or things that share similar qualities and are often grouped together. So let's look at our activity 3. Design a dichotomous key based on the following organisms. Like I've mentioned before, always try to choose the odd one out. So what is one organism that you see in the diagram that is totally different, or you can characterize it in a different group as the ones you see on the screen? So you have an earthworm, a spider, a fish, and a dog. have some time to think about your dichotomous key before you design it. Okay, let's look at the dichotomous key that I have on screen. Has scales, does not have scales. So the fish is the only organism that has scales within the 4 organisms. Like I said before, always focus on physical differences. So the differences that you can see or the ones that you can observe that differentiates or determines how one organism is different from the other. The second option has a long segmented body and does not have a long segmented body. So the only organism that has a long segmented body is the worm. And our last option has 8 legs. That option is referring to the spider, and does not have 8 legs. It is referring to the dog. So again, always remember to focus on the odd one out. And when you know how an organism is different from the other, it is very easy to design those options or the choices. Okay, look at our next activity, activity 4. Complete the dichotomous key below. So look at the picture, look at the diagram. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different bees, and you are going to read the dichotomous key. Has small wings, has large wings, has a single pair of wings, has a double pair of wings, has a double pair of wings, has a single pair of wings, and the last one has spots and does not have spots. So what we're going to do here is try to identify which species is A, B, C, D, and E. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do this activity. Okay, great. So let's look at the answers. So you have the answers should be D, F, C, E, B, and A. So it has small wings. So you look at the diagram. Which of the bees have small wings? You have species A and species B. So at the far end, they have small wings. And then you look at the option, it tells you to go to option 2. Has a single pair of wings. So that is referring to A. Has a double pair of wings. As you can see in the picture, it is referring to species B. Has large wings, which is in your first option. It says to go to free. So the bees that are going to free is D, F, C, and E. The first option for free has a double pair of wings, and this refers to species D, F, and E, is to go to 4. Has a single pair of wings, which is species C. So the bees that are moving on to step 4 is D, F, and E. Has spots. So the bees that has spots are F and E. And the bee that does not have spots is species D. So you are left with F and E. So if you look at the picture carefully, you're going to look at the physical characteristics that set apart F and E. So they both have 2 wings. They both have spots. The main difference that you can observe or see are the wings. Has black wings, so that refers to species E. Does not have black wings, that is, yes, F. And those are the answers to our second dichotomous key. So look at our next dichotomous key. This one becomes a little bit more complicated or a little bit more difficult. Study the dichotomous key to answer the questions that follow. So the first question, identify the names of each bird A, B, C, D, and E. And then question number 2 is a multiple choice question. Which characteristics should best be used to distinguish between bird B and bird C? So if you look at bird B and bird C, what is the main difference? Is it the beak shape? No, both of them have the same beak shape. Is it the beak length? No, it looks like they have the similar length. Or is it the stripe on the head? B does not have a stripe, but C does, just above his eyes. So the correct answer should be C. So quickly read through the dichotomous key, and then we will determine which bird is A, B, C, D, and E, and we'll match them up with their common names. So the answers to this activity is bird A, Dunlin, that was bird A. Bird B is a bald eagle. Bird C, which was the osprey. Bird D is a braid sparrow. And bird E is the kiwi. Also, if you think back to the stripe on the head, like I mentioned, for our multiple choice question, it is the main characteristic that sets apart bird B and bird C. Okay, the summary of today's lesson. This is the main thing that you should have learned from this lesson. Firstly, is a binomial nomenclature. It is a formal system of naming species or living things by giving each a name composed of two parts. If you remember correctly, a genus has a species name and it also has a genus name. The genus is the first name and the species name is the second name. Together they make up an organism's scientific name. Good. So every organism has a scientific name, and that name is made up of the genus and the species name. And lastly, a dichotomous key. It is a tool that provides the reader with two statements or two choices that describes characteristics of an item or living organism. So again, until next time, always remember the scientific name for humans is Homo sapiens. Homo, which means man-like or like a man, and sapiens, it means, yes, intelligence or wise. Always remember, names are written in italics. If you are typing it out and printing it from the computer, a scientific name which contains the genus and the species, it is in italics. The genus is always the first letter and it is in capital letters, or it starts with a capital letter. And the species name, it starts with a lowercase or a small letter. If you are writing the scientific name, always remember to underline the scientific name. So underline both the genus and the species.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Hopefully next time we will talk about our strand too. But for now, till Passover.